I'm Caitlin, an EMDR therapist and a trauma-informed yoga teacher. And today I'm going to talk to you about my recent blog post called Why Talking About Trauma Doesn't Heal It. But before we talk about trauma and the way it's processed in our brain and our body, we have to understand a little bit about what happens when we experience trauma. So when we experience trauma, our brain, which is kind of in a way like a computer, it becomes overwhelmed, overheated, and it's focusing on one thing, survival. And parts of our brain are literally shut off. So this thinking part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, goes offline. It's not there anymore. What does come online are more primitive parts of our brain, structures that can be classified as the limbic system. And basically all that means is that this more primitive part of our brain comes online and it's very focused on remembering everything it sees, feels, all of these things, because these are going to be the building blocks of our memory. And the reason why that is important is because when we go through the world, when we come into contact with, let's say, those same sights, sounds, whatever, those are triggers and those bring us back to that previous state of fight or flight. Our brain feels like we're right back there again. Now, if we take all of that and kind of keep that in mind, let's think about, traditional talk therapy. Traditional talk therapy, what we do is we go in, right? We use this prefrontal cortex, this thinking part of our brain, to reason, to kind of have some logic, maybe create more rational thoughts, things like that. And that is called top-down processing, meaning we're going to start with the highest part of our brain, the most advanced part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex. We're going to shift that and it's going to flow all the way down to the more primitive part of our brain, our limbic system. The problem is though, is that the limbic system doesn't respond to logic, which is why we can know that we're enough, but it doesn't feel that way. And it doesn't store memories in words. It stores memories in those things we were talking about, the sights, sounds, all of those things. And the reason why this is so important is because so many people, so many clients that I've had or, have heard had this experience, go into therapy looking to process their trauma. And in my experience, what I've seen is that a lot of clients go, they tell their therapist every single detail about their trauma. They become really overwhelmed, really anxious. They leave feeling worse. They're on edge. Their triggers are coming up more often. And there's no real resolution. And that can make us feel really hopeless and really overwhelmed. But it's important to know that if that's happening, that's not your fault. It's just that that's not the way that our brain processes trauma. That's not the way that these things are held. So in a way, it's sort of like we're speaking to that part of our brain, our limbic system, in a language it doesn't understand. Okay, and so it's not understanding, it's not hearing. We're talking to this part of the brain, our prefrontal cortex, but we need to be talking to our limbic system. So that is why talking about trauma doesn't resolve it, right? If talking about trauma resolved it, woohoo, we'd all be, cured, it'd all be great, right? But it doesn't. So then the question is, then what do we do? So I talked before about that top-down processing. Somatic-based therapies are bottom-up processing. So what does that mean? So if you think about like a plant, see, I like plants. That top-down processing is we're going to start with the leaf. It's going to go all the way through the stem into the roots. Bottom-up processing is we're going to start at the root and we're going to actually change those roots, and that's going to change what grows or what's going from there, the thoughts and the feelings that go from there. And that is hugely beneficial for clients to make that shift. And I can say that I've seen people make a shift in 1 or 2 sessions that they were unable to make for years, because not that they were wrong, they were bad, anything they were doing was wrong. It just was not, the brain wasn't getting the message. So somatic therapies can look like a couple of different things. One of the most common types of somatic-based therapy is EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And that is a type of therapy, that's the modality that I use, that focuses on the felt sense, the somatic, the images, and the thoughts, like the internal monologue. And it works with, because we're connecting to those feelings and the images, we're connecting to that limbic system, and it helps you to desensitize those memories so that they're not triggering, and helps you to see yourself differently when they come up again. So that's one. Two other types of therapies that are more somatic based are sensory motor psychotherapy and somatic experiencing. Now, both of these types of therapies and EMDR are all very well researched. You can go on any of their websites, find practitioners who are certified or have trainings in those things, and they'll be happy to help you out. So my suggestion to anybody starting on a trauma healing path would be work smarter, not harder. Find somebody who's trained in trauma, who really specializes in it, and somebody who's trained in an evidence-based practice. So someone who is trained in something that we know works, okay? So look up those folks, find those people, and start doing the work, and you'll be amazed at the results. So look forward to my blog post on this, which will be coming out shortly here. And I look forward to hearing any feedback you have. If this was helpful, share it with a friend, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.